If you missed your favorite show or interview, visit episodes on our website at theworldtoday.news. Our live shows are also on X, Facebook, YouTube, Rumble, Kick, and Twitch. Now there really is no reason to miss out on anything on theworldtoday.news.
For The World Today, this is James O'Neill. An independent report revealed more than 350 Greenlandic indigenous women and girls, some as young as 12, were forcibly given contraception by Danish health authorities for the 1960s through 1991. Victims were fitted with IUDs or given injections without consent, part of efforts to curb population growth. Denmark and Greenland apologized in advance of the report, which documented 488 cases, though estimates suggest thousands were affected. Nearly 150 women have sued Denmark for violating their rights. The revelations highlight a legacy of dehumanizing policies, including child removals and forced family separations. French President Emmanuel Macron rejected Marine Le Pen's demand for fresh elections after Prime Minister François Bayrou resigned following a failed confidence vote on austerity measures. Bayrou became Macron's fourth prime minister to collapse since 2022, leaving Parliament split between the left, centrist, and Le Pen's right-wing National Rally. Macron is expected to appoint another centrist ally, with figures like Gérald Darmanin and Sébastien Lecornu floated as possible successors. France's debt has soared to 114% of GDP, sparking EU scrutiny, while unions prepare mass strikes that could escalate into nationwide unrest. A Russian drone shot down in Ukraine allegedly contained a Chinese-made camera with test footage from Shenzhen, suggesting Chinese involvement in Russia's war effort. The discovery was shared by Ukrainian analyst Serhiy Flash Beskresnov, known for exposing drone activity online. Experts identified the equipment as a View Pro A40 Pro, manufactured in China, with AI tracking capabilities. While China denies supplying lethal weapons, Ukrainian intelligence claims 80% of Russian drone electronics originate from China. Reports indicate Russia relies heavily on Chinese components and logistics to sustain drone production, raising concerns of deepening Beijing-Moscow cooperation. Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene has proposed stripping $600 million in Ukraine aid from the draft Pentagon spending bill, arguing U.S. funds should not support foreign wars. Greene noted the U.S. has already sent more than $175 billion to Kyiv and said taxpayer money should address domestic needs amid $37 trillion in national debt. She also introduced amendments targeting additional Ukraine funds, as well as aid for Israel, Syria, and Iraq. The move aligns with Trump's scaled-back support for Ukraine as he pushes NATO allies to shoulder more of the financial burden. A Michigan judge dismissed charges against 15 Republicans accused of attempting to falsely certify Donald Trump as the 2020 election winner. Ingham County Judge Kristen Simmons ruled September 9th that prosecutors failed to prove intent to defraud, noting even a key witness said the defendants believed they were doing the right thing. The group, charged in 2023 by Attorney General Dana Nessel, faced forgery and conspiracy counts carrying up to 14 years in prison. Prosecutors in other states have filed similar cases, but none have reached trial. Joe Biden won Michigan by about 155,000 votes. Australia Prime Minister Anthony Albanese will visit Vanuatu to meet Prime Minister Jotham Napat as talks continue on a proposed $500 million Nakamal Pact covering economic ties and security. Albanese said progress is likely, though a signing is uncertain. Earlier ministerial visits outlined Australian support, including roughly $120 million for 2 data centers, $110 million for climate initiatives, plus security and digital cultural projects, with some security details undisclosed. The trip precedes the Pacific Islands Forum and follows Australian funding for PNG Rugby League and Tuvalu support. The push comes amid heightened competition with China, which has expanded grant-based projects across key Pacific locations.
Some of my ministers and my MPs, they feel that it requires more discussions.
We're very confident that the agreement can be reached.
This has been James O'Neill for The World Today.
If you missed your favorite show or interview, visit episodes on our website at theworldtoday.news. Now there really is no reason to miss out on anything on theworldtoday.news.
And back now, second hour now, and this is The World Today. Before we get into our guest, got to make mention that the Victoria has now signed, or about to submit the bill for a land treaty, which is basically, it means that we're going to, in their case, they will have major say in many of the open areas and the land areas of Victoria. And I'll play you something in a minute from around the Mallee, around the Milawa Mallee area near Mildura, and I'll play you that in a second. It was announced on all the networks. They said, actually, I'll come back to that. We'll play this one first. Cam, can you play Victoria?
Victorian students from Prep to Year 10 will be taught Aboriginal truth-telling under a landmark new treaty agreement. The shake-up has been slammed by the opposition, which claims it's another version of the voice to Parliament by stealth.
After generations of Indigenous advocacy, a historic moment in Parliament.
I commend the bill to the House.
We are at a turning point in this nation's history.
Top of the agenda of Australia's first treaty as it makes its way through Parliament, a school curriculum shake-up. Students from Prep to Year 10 to be given an insight into Victoria's First Peoples, taught about the harm of colonisation and injustice.
It's a real watershed moment. If we don't know our own backyard, there's no way that we can make sure that our future is the best one possible.
If rubber stamped, a new Indigenous council will replace the First Peoples Assembly, armed with greater powers to advise government on Indigenous policy. The cost to taxpayers to bankroll the permanent body, $70 million a year.
Governments are spending significant amounts of money, huge amounts of money, seeking to close the gap, but it's not working.
Before the legislation was even tabled, the coalition flagged its intention to shut it down, comparing the treaty to the voice referendum, where majority of Victorians voted no.
The government are trying to put through a voice to Parliament without taking it to the Victorian community.
Despite the declaration, the coalition is powerless to stop it, with clear support in the upper house.
It is something to celebrate and something that all Victorians can be proud to be a part of.
What I'm going to do is, after watching that, is go and have a bowl of crushed glass. I mean, I love the Greens. I'll have a bottle of glass for them. And what do that teachers' union rep say? Oh, we have to, we need to know what is happening in our backyard. We need to know about our backyard. Well, his backyard is way different than everybody else in the real world.
A hoax about carbon dioxide in the climate has caused a global energy and economic disaster. This is today's News Talk, the world today.
And back again, and nice to have your company too. This is one of our favourite guests, Dr. Ladislav Zemánek, who's a non-resident research fellow at the China-CEE Institute in Budapest. Doctor, thanks for joining us. And could you just tell me your thoughts, by the way, on the Russia-China's deepening relationship and President Trump's comment that Russia was lost to China, which I find absolutely, that's just ridiculous.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me, first of all. I agree that such argumentations like that Russia is lost to China are misleading for several reasons. First, Russia is a huge sovereign country with its own interests, with its own history, with its own experience, and with its own way of life. And it includes the behavior at the international level. And from this point of view, we should understand the relationship with China. Of course, it's undoubtedly true that, especially after 2022, with the outbreak of the war in Ukraine, the relations between Russia and China deepened, and China was very helpful to Russia in the sense that it continued cooperating with Moscow despite the disagreement from and criticism from Western countries, which insisted on cutting off relations with Russia. But the deepening cooperation, accelerating cooperation, and expanding cooperation to a wide range of areas of mutual relations doesn't mean, at least not automatically, that Russia is subject to China or something like that. Because it's similar like to argue that North Korea is a puppet of China. That's not true. And of course, Russia, its maneuvering space, its leeway for behavior in international politics is specific, and it's not so wide like before. Of course, because of the pressure from the West and the new Iron Curtain between Russia and Europe and the West as a whole, but it continues cooperating with many partners across the world, and even though economically, in economic terms, China is much more powerful than Russia. It doesn't translate. It doesn't translate into a kind of subjugation or something like that, because if it was true, Russia would do exactly what China would require, which is not true.
Is President Trump acting rationally? Many would say never has, and not at this moment. Others would say sometimes, and others saying not. What I see at times is a guy that, I mean, we've all bought and sold, or a lot of us have bought and sold real estate. And when you want to buy something and a realtor has property to sell, he's your best friend. And when he sold you the property, he forgets your name almost immediately. It must be some sort of cognitive disease that realtors get. I also see that President Trump, he's an ex-realtor. He bought and sold all sorts of big buildings. Is he acting more like a realtor, out of his depth, and forgetting diplomacy between some of the greatest nations on the planet, as in might-wise, China and Russia, and even India? I mean, there aren't that many left that he can't insult. He's running out of that list. So is he acting irrationally, or has he always been acting irrationally?
I'm not a psychologist, so it's difficult to evaluate his personality. But undoubtedly, it's true that in some regards, he's very rational and predictable. Similar to, for example, Russian President Vladimir Putin, who is accused of being irrational, but the opposite is true, because he promotes long-term interest, and he insists on basic core interests, and he communicates it to the international audience for many years. Donald Trump, of course, is a bit more complicated from my point of view, but in some areas he behaves very rationally, for example, and pragmatically, which is very important. Uh, for example, in relation to Russia and to the war in Ukraine, his approach and his attitude is quite constructive, even though it can violate some rules imposed or formulated by the West itself and then imposed to others. But we shouldn't doubt about his efforts to settle the war in Ukraine somehow, in one way or another. And his business-like or business-style approach can help in this regard. But the problem, of course, is structural, in the sense that Europe and the European elites, European liberal elites and actors have completely different ideas of how to solve the problem. And moreover, there are influential actors within the United States themselves who belong to what is sometimes called the deep state or the security intelligence apparatus, which of course hinders and pose a obstacle to Trump's policy and strategy. We saw it during his first term when he also wanted to reset and revive relations with Moscow, but it failed. Not because of him, but because of the pressure from influential actors within the U.S. establishment. So these are structural factors which should be taken into account when assessing and interpreting the steps of the U.S. administration at the moment. It's not only about Trump.
It's reports are that Donald Trump's very frustrated at the moment with the lack of progress that is being made with peace talks and his relationship with Moscow. What would you see? I mean, I can tell you. I would suggest many things, and I would probably get locked up. But if you're looking at the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, the recent summit, and you had some of the largest players on the world stage, India, China, and Russia. And India, they might go to town by saying things about China and Russia, but you can't do that about India. India is still part of establishment around the world. So there was it was a great cooperation. The diplomacy there was so evident, and the trust. How long that will last for, who knows? But it seemed to be there too. But they were practicing diplomacy. Do you think something along the lines of doing what the SCO summit did, in the fact that they acted very, very, they acted like adults. They didn't go, saying terrible things. China's doing that and Russia's doing that. They treated each other with respect. Do you think Donald Trump, to save his frustrations and hopefully, possibly avoid a heart attack, if he took one step back and started acting like a president should act and treat the others in a very diplomatic and respectful fashion, that perhaps his frustrations when it comes to peace would be alleviated a great deal?
Yeah. It's true, or I think that, for example, in relation to India, Trump's attitude is quite irrational. When we talked about his rationality or irrationality, because his pressure or the U.S. administration pressure on India, including the high tariffs imposed on New Delhi, of course, motivates India to find ways of cooperating with China and Russia. It's traditionally quite good, but in relation to China, it's been much more complicated. But recently, especially over the last one year, the relations between India and China are improving quite substantially, including the launch of direct flights, talks about the border issue, and so on. And the very fact that the Prime Minister Narendra Modi arrived in Tianjin, the city near Beijing, where the SCO Shanghai Cooperation Organization summit was held last week, demonstrates that India is prepared and is willing to deepen cooperation not only with Russia but also with China. And of course, it's quite irritating to the United States, because India was perceived as a natural ally against the so-called, or what was perceived as China threat. So in this regard, the steps made by the U.S. administration seem irrational, counterproductive from their point of view.
Yet there seems to be this underlying feeling that Russia is open to a greater US partnership, and it also seems that the US would also like something like that. Why can't they? Why isn't it happening? Simple as that. Why is this not happening?
You mean between Russia and the United States?
Yeah, because both of them want to have a greater partnership. You can see that there is. I mean, even after the Alaska get together, there seems to be. It's almost like this underlying. There's this trust. They have a trust still, or it seems so. But then you have, on the other hand, this is maybe the irrational thing that we're going to impose new sanctions. We're going to do this to Russia, blah, 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 blah. Yet a couple of days beforehand, they're shaking hands and sipping on good cognac the day before. I mean, there needs to be, this impasse needs to be broken. How would you do it? There you are, I'm putting you on the spot. But how would you do this? How would you fix Donald Trump?
I can tell you that when I was in Russia for a couple of weeks in the spring this year, the Russians were very enthusiastic about Donald Trump and the new U.S. administration, and they were, and I believe that they are still prepared to develop or revive relations and cooperations between Moscow and Washington. But the main problem is what I called structural obstacle on the US side. The actors and forces, and political actors, security actors within the US establishment who prevent the administration, Donald Trump himself, from making some breakthrough in terms of the bilateral relationship. So it seems to me that Donald Trump is capable enough to make some breakthrough and deals with Russia and with Vladimir Putin, including around the war in Ukraine. And I believe that the two men would be able to find a political settlement quite quickly. But they are not the only actors on the scene. So the situation is much more complicated and will remain complicated in this regard, because I can once again remind the role of Europe in this situation, because we can see that the EU leaders, most of them, are more hawkish, much more hawkish in relation to Russia than the current U.S. administration. And it seems that they are prepared to prevent or provoke even disagreements between Russia on one hand and the United States if it's necessary. So in this regard, I think that a long process is ahead of us, and no solution will be found soon, unfortunately.
Can the US-China relationship be repaired? Trump had which seemed to be a good relationship with Xi during Trump's first term. At the moment, it looks nothing like that at all. Is there a possibility? I mean, there's always a possibility. Is there a realistic possibility that Xi or China and US could get together and have that closer relationship that we all want?
It seems to me that the probability of reviving relations between Washington and Moscow is more is higher than in the case of relationship between Washington and Beijing, because in the long term, China is perceived as the main rival. It's from the U.S. point of view, not Russia, but China. So there are many factors in play which are disturbing in terms of, or from the point of view of the White House and the American elites. And even though I'm not sure, but it's possible that Donald Trump could find a way to to cooperate with Beijing, including the President Xi Jinping. But again, he's not the only actor on the U.S. side. There are many, even within his conservative or national conservative movement. There are different factions and groups with different ideas and with different interests, and of course it influences the possibilities of and steps of the U.S. administration and Donald Trump. But at the same time, there are some areas where the two countries can find can cooperate even now theoretically. I think it would be it's quite possible, including some common projects or joint projects in the Arctic, which is a very important topic in today's international relations and geopolitics. The Arctic and the struggle for influence there and extraction of the raw materials there. And it seems to me that there is a space for the United States, Russia, and China to explore some opportunities to jointly work in this area in the Arctic. It's one of the possible ideas. Or, for example, Donald Trump is open or pursues the idea of including China into trilateral arms control regimes, an idea which China opposes, but still, I think it's one of the topics which can be discussed realistically and pragmatically.
Maybe the conduit to get China and the US back on some sort of even footing would be Putin, and because I admire his diplomatic prowess is very, very good, and I would see not the only, but one of the trying to get the round square peg into the round hole would be the deep state or the neocons such as Lindsey Graham and these people. The last thing they would want, they'd all have heart attacks if you had Xi, Putin, and even and Trump together, because they have there's that underlying not respect, I suppose, but it is a possibility, and I don't see any distraction from Xi's point of view or Putin's point of view. I do see it from the US's though, because the neocons and the inverted commas deep state, they would just have kittens, wouldn't they?
Yeah, absolutely. Of course, the so-called deep state is a problem, but not only in the United States, but we can observe its actual role in European politics, and we can see how the establishment, liberal democratic establishment, pushes against any political opponents who promote a different idea how to do European politics. For example, Hungary, Viktor Orban's, or currently Slovakia, and other countries. So it's a problem, and it's not only about the U.S. Deep state, but also about the huge influence networks which have been cultivated for decades, and which served the Americans to influence the European politics and political scene in the old continent. And paradoxically, or maybe naturally, Donald Trump is an ally for those from Europe who advocate for a completely different attitude toward international relations and international politics, like Serbia again, Hungary, Slovakia. This movement is especially impactful in Central Europe, which will noticing. So these countries also provide some examples how to cope with the problem of external interference, especially from the United States. So we will see how it will evolve.
It'll be interesting. Just back to the peace discussions. It's just going on and on of nothingness. It's like a nothing burger, as we would say. Where do you see peace discussions going? Which way? Will they actually happen? Will it be 2 months, 3 months? Will there be other things that pop up that sort of deter or derail the peace discussions? What's your thoughts?
Who knows? Nobody knows. But from my point of view, the very fact that the negotiations or talks, especially between Russia and the United States, have started is very important. Even though, for example, the Alaska summit didn't bring any breakthroughs or concrete, tangible results, it's not so important. It's not essential. The essential is that the communication and normal diplomacy have revived, because we can draw some parallels with the past, and if we have a look at the 1980s and the cooperation or interactions, exchanges between the then Soviet Union with Mikhail Gorbachev and United States with Ronald Reagan. Also, they held many bilateral meetings, and they held many summits before some tangible results were produced. So the very fact that communications has revived is very important, and it's a success under the current circumstances. Of course, there are no guarantees that it will lead to a positive solution or constructive solution in relation to the Ukrainian war in the short term or mid term. But we can hope that now that the communication will bring some results. Because without communication, I don't understand. I don't understand the idea of the European elites that who oppose the very diplomacy, because they want to isolate Russia, not talk to the Russian leadership, but they can't solve the problem without engaging with the Russian leadership. It doesn't make any sense. So from this point of view, the fact that the negotiations or talks at least between Russia and the United States have started.
Yeah, it's interesting. The Europeans, I mean, truly, if ever someone needed to get spanked by their parents, it's them. They're just terrible, and they are playing as spoilers. But you see the disruptions within each of their countries. They can't even run their own countries. You look at Macron and look at Merz from Germany. Look at Starmer in the UK. Look at the whole lot of them. Look at von der Leyen running around. I mean. Do you think Donald Trump, as we wind this up because we are running out of time, do you think Donald Trump will side with them to disrupt
peace in Ukraine? Because that coalition of the stupid people that went to Washington to get Trump to help and defeat Putin, which goes against a lot of his other narratives. You can't be married to one person and then married to another. You've got to either say yes or no. What do you think he'll do?
I think that Donald Trump should be more tough in relation to the European leaders, because he's the boss. He's the real boss, not from der Leyen or Emmanuel Macron. They speak a lot, but that's all, and they can make trouble and problems. But Donald Trump and the U.S. administration is much stronger, so they should. They should stop these European liberal leaders from making troubles. I think it's possible, and it's in line with the long-term, decades-long American approach to Europe, because it's Europe which has been subject to the United States, not Russia to China, as we discussed at the beginning of our today's discussion.
Just quickly, I don't know whether you have much thought about it, and we see that just as right over the other side of the world, where there's peace and tranquility, not in the Middle East, see that Israel has just bombed Qatar. A couple of things: U.S. support Israel. Donald Trump made some impression with the Middle East on his recent visit there. In fact, he did such a great job, they gave him a jet. Qatar gave him a jet. And now we have Israel bombing Qatar, supported by, of course, the US. Do you think they'll ask for his jet back? Because they might ask for his plane. Because I mean, I thought Ukraine was had many hidden issues. But when you look at the Middle East, and you look at, does not Israel want any friends? I don't understand what they're doing. Why were they? I'm sure we know Qatar has some terrorists there, but so do all the Middle Eastern countries, as far as I can see, including Israel. I just don't know what they're up to. What's your thoughts, just quickly?
I think that Israel is feeling itself very confident and strong at this moment, because of Donald Trump making of Israel. It's nothing new. It happened during his first term. It repeats itself now, and pragmatically or cynically speaking, it seems to me that if Israel wants to change the political landscape or geopolitical landscape in the Middle East, now is the moment. And it seems to me that the current leadership in Israel is aware of this fact and tries to make use of this opportunity to do it, irrespective of the international law, irrespective of the approach of the United States or China, which of course criticizes Israel's actions and behavior as violating the international law and the international agreements regarding the Israel-Palestine issue and so on. But it seems to me that Israel is feeling itself confident enough to do what it considers right.
It's a big happy world out there, isn't it? As Donald Trump would say, a big beautiful world. Fantastic conversation. And it's not, when I said it's a big beautiful world, we just need to get rid of a few of the leaders of various countries that would actually help. If somebody wants to find out more about you, do you have socials that they can go to?
I have my profile at social media such as Facebook or LinkedIn, and I'm also at Academia Edu, which is a social website for researchers. So they can find me there, and of course I can recommend everyone to follow my articles and commentaries at RT.
Fantastic. And I just love
Yeah.
RT. RT is magnificent. Dr. Ladislav Zemánek, non-resident research fellow at the China-CEE Institute in Budapest. Thank you very much for your time, sir. Appreciate it more than you know. This is The World Today.